So let's see how we're going to do that. I'll start off logging in as the driver and show you a quick change that I've made. So you can see all the requests are a fair bit further away now. That's because I've updated the location. So let's update the driver's location to -0.4 and 52. You can see, of course, those update automatically. But we've now got a new field in the user class that shows the location of the driver. And that's required so that the rider can see where the driver is. So that'll be your first thing to fix. And then if we now log in as a rider, then we see our usual rider page, which of course is automatically updated when the user moves around. And now let's call an Uber for our rider. And then we'll cheat slightly by updating the request manually. It just saves us logging out and logging back in again. So I'm going to select the username of one of our drivers. There's his location. And then find the latest request. It'll be that top one there. And then update the driver username to that username. And then if we jump over to our app, and there we go. So we can now see that the driver is 34 miles away, and we can see both driver and rider on the map, just like we did with the driver before. And then as the driver gets closer and closer, we can move the driver along and see it update. So 52.5, as the driver moves in, automatically updates on the app. And then when the driver gets there, it says the driver is here. And a few seconds later, it resets and allows the user to call another Uber if they want to. So that's how we want things to work. There's quite a lot to set up there. So as always, feel free to watch my version if you like, but do try and have a go yourself. Best of luck. Go for it. All right, hope that went well. I'm going to start by looking in the view requests activity on the driver side and changing our code so that the driver's location is saved. Because of course we'll need that to tell the rider how far the driver is away. So we've already got our code set up to update when the driver's location updates. So all we need to do is save that to our pass server. So I'm going to save that right there in the user class for the driver themselves. So we just need to get the current user, and we're going to put a location variable, and this is going to be a geopoint. So we'll create a new pass geopoint using location.getLatitude and location.getLongitude. And then we'll simply save that in the background. And we won't even have a callback for that, as we don't particularly need to do anything when it's successful. Okay. So let's just check that and make sure that that works, and that we can see the driver's location saved in their user class. And here we go. So let's just update the location slightly and then refresh our pass dashboard, and we should, with any luck, see a new location geopoint. There we go, for our driver. Excellent. So the driver's geopoint will now be updated as he moves around. Now we just need to report that information back to the rider. So if we remember, our rider activity looks like this. It's a Google map with our call an Uber button at the bottom right and then log out at the top. So if the driver is on their way, we need a way to tell the user that that's the case. So I'm going to bring in a text view, which will initially be blank, but we'll use that to show information to the user. So I'll call it info text view. So to do that, we'll run a bit of code every few seconds, which checks to see the latest status of a request. And we have done this before, but not for quite a while. So what we need is a handler called handler, which is going to be a new handler. And we want to set that up when the user requests a new Uber. So let's create our handler, and we want to post delayed, and we want to post a new runnable, which, if you'll remember, is a method that we can run every second, 5 seconds, minute, whatever we like. So we put the number of milliseconds after the run method, and I'm going to go for every 2 seconds. I think that's about right. Obviously, longer would mean that we would use less of the user's battery, but then they would get slower updates as well. And this is going to be called from a number of different places, so I'm going to call the method check for updates. And then we'll define our method up here. So here we'll want to do a number of things, and the first is to check to see whether someone has picked up this request or not, which we can tell by looking for the presence of a driver username in the request object. So let's get the request object using pass query, pass object, then we'll create a query, pass query.getQuery on the request object. And we want to query where the username is equal to the current username. So pass user dot get current user dot get username. And we want to find where exists the driver username. Okay, and then we'll run our query. With a new find callback. And then we'll check to see if E is null and objects.size is greater than 0. Then we know that we've got a driver on their way. So we're going to take the info text view and update that with the user's information. So let's create a text view called info text view. And then we'll set it up in the onCreate method. Find view by ID, r.id.info text view. So once we're here, we're going to set info text view initially to just your driver is on the way. One other change I'm going to make here is to hide the call Uber button to stop the user being able to cancel the Uber once the driver is on the way. And I'm going to do that with set visibility to view dot invisible. Okay. And then because we want that to happen every 2 seconds, we're going to set up our handler again. And I'll do that whether we get an error or not once our query is finished. And then we've got one other place where we want to check for updates, and that's here. When we've started the activity and we've realized that there is a request active already, so we'll run check for updates there. And actually, here we don't need the handler. So we can just run check for updates directly, and we'll just have the handler there, or there even, in the check for updates method itself. All right. So let's see that in action. We'll need to log in as a new rider, and we'll do a bit of cheeky poking around the past dashboard to enable a request for a driver. So while we're there, I'm going to select the username of the one driver that has a location. There we go. And then we'll make a new request, and we'll, once we've checked that it's working, we'll assign the driver to it. Okay, so here we go. So we're currently logged in as a driver. So let's now log out and log back in as a rider. And we'll call an Uber to where we currently are. So that seems to have been successful. Let's jump back over to our Pass API, and we should now get a new user. There we go. Worth just checking which one that was. It'll be the newest one. There we go at the top there. So now I'm going to update our driver username and then jump back over, and you can see that that has picked up already. So your driver is on the way and the button has disappeared. Excellent. So now we need to be a little bit cleverer, and rather than just tell them that the driver's on the way, we want to tell them how far away the driver is. So to do that, we'll need to find driver using a parse query, but this one is going to be a parse user query. And we want to find a user whose username is equal to the driver username that we've just accessed here. So I'm going to use objects.get 0 to get that first object. You could loop through, but we can just do it this way. And we want to get a string, and the string we want to get is driver username. So that will get the username of the driver that's picked up this particular request. And then we'll run our query. With a new find callback. And again, we'll check if E is null and objects.size is greater than 0. Then we can get the driver's location from the location geopoint in the user class. So let's create a pass geopoint. I'll call it driver location, which is going to be objects.get 0.get pass geopoint, and this is called location. And then we want to know how far away that is from our current user, and for that we'll need to get our user's current location. So we'll use our location manager. Again, checking that we've got permission, and because we're inside a closure here, we'll need to use riderActivity.this to refer to the activity. So either that's the case, or we have an API level less than 26, or 23, sorry. Either way, we're allowed to get the location. And actually, I don't want to request location updates. I want to get the last known location. And we've got some code to do that down here. So I'll copy that down. So we're getting the last known location, and as long as it's not null, we're going to compare it to driver location. To do that, we'll need to convert it to a geopoint. So we'll create a pass geopoint user location, which is going to be new pass geopoint using last known location dot get latitude and last known location dot get longitude. And then we can compare driver location and user location to get the distance. We've already done that once before over in view requests activity. So let's find that code. And use it again. There it is. So I'll copy that down and then back over to rider activity. So we've got our distance in miles. This time it's going to be from driver location to user location. And then we want it to 1 decimal place. And now we can update our code to say something rather more useful than driver on the way. We can say your driver is distance 1 dp to string miles away. Okay. So let's take a look and see if that works. We should now get a distance displayed to the rider that's updated every 2 seconds. And there we go. We've got the driver is 0 miles away. I don't think that's an error. I think it's just because they have the same location. So let's update that. There we go. So you can see that updated straight away. And let's just check when we update the driver location. So if we change that to something like 54, then you can see that that's increased to 136 miles away. Great. So the final thing then is to show the driver's location to the user. And we'll do this here at the same time that we're updating the driver's distance. And we'll use the same code that we used in the driver location activity. So let's select all of that and bring it over to our rider activity. And then we'll just update the variable names here to show that we're using lat lungs. So for the driver location, we're going to want driver location dot get latitude. And similarly, driver location dot get longitude. For the request location, we can use user location up here. So user location dot get latitude and user location dot get longitude. And then we'll set this up as before, but here the position is going to be driver location lat lung, and the title will be driver location. And here we're going to have request location lat lung, and that will be your location. And there we go. So that should now update every 2 seconds with the driver and the user location. One thing we need to now check is that when the user's location updates, we don't want to update the map, because we only want to update the map using our new update method rather than centering the map on the user. So if we have a Boolean, which we might call driver active, we could test to see if that's false before doing that update. And then we can create our driver active Boolean, which is false by default, but then we'll set it to true when we've verified that a driver is on their way. There we go. So let's try that out. With any luck, we'll now see not only the distance that the driver is away, but we'll see both the driver and the rider nicely scaled on the rider's map. And there we go. Not the best, most promising driver. They are still almost 200 miles away, but that is the behavior that we wanted. Let's make our driver a little bit closer, so minus 0.4 and 52. Let's bring our driver in. So if we change that to 52 and have another look, there we go. That looks a little bit better. Great. So we're pretty much there. The one small thing I want to add is to test whether the driver arrives and then update the app accordingly. So we'll do that when we've got the distance in miles here. So we'll check to see if distance in miles is less than, and I'll say 0.01. I'll consider that an arrival. Then we want to do something special. Otherwise, we'll do what we did before. So if the distance in miles is very small, then first we'll update info text view and set the text, your driver is here. And then we'll set up a new runnable In fact, I'll cut that code and put it there and also there. And we'll move the invisibility setting there as well. So here, we're going to give them a few seconds. Let's make it 5 seconds to see that their driver is here. And then, after that time, we're going to set the visibility back to 0. We're going to set the text of the button to call an Uber. We're going to set request active to be false. And we're going to set driver active to be false as well. And as a final thing, we're going to delete the request so that it's no longer active. And we've got that code here. So let's create a new quick query. And I'll get rid of that one so that we'll remove all queries with that username just in case there's more than one, which there definitely shouldn't be, but this will tidy things up if there are. And then we use find in background with a new find callback. And if E is null, we'll loop through the objects like that, and we'll delete them. There we go. So let's just try that out. Another option there, rather than running that after 5 seconds, might be to pop up an alert for the user, and then when they click OK, reset everything. But this should do the trick. And here we go. So let's gradually move our driver in. We're at 0.4, and let's change our location to precisely 52. There we go, so that updates nicely. And then we'll update our driver location. And I'll try and move things around so we can see this happening more or less live. So get rid of the extended controls, move the emulator. Here we go. So if we change this to 0.33, then it gets further away. That's no good. Oh, it's also not clearing. We'll have to check that in a moment. So 0.32. We're still getting further away. Let me remind myself what it was. So 52 and minus 0.4. So let's say 0.39. There we go. So we're now very close. And now let's make it minus 0.4. Then it changes to your driver is here. And after 5 seconds, you can see it goes back to call an Uber, and the user can start the process there if they want. So just a couple of small things. I think we'll get rid of the label your driver is here, and then we'll also set the markers to disappear. So first off, let's get the info text view and set the text to empty. And then also let's find where we update the map. Here we go. And we'll use mmap.clear. And there we go. So that takes us to the end of our Uber app. And as always, congratulations if you managed to build at least part of it yourself. We do have a really complicated setup here with 2 different maps activities, a pass dashboard with user classes of 2 different types, and also a separate request class as well, and a lot of things going on automatically either every 2 seconds or when the location is updated. So there was a lot to this app, and well done for getting this far. You may be pleased to hear that we're going to move away from our pass server social-based apps the next section, and we're going to learn how to make our first proper Android game, and that is a clone of Flappy Bird. So as always, take a bit of a break, give yourself a pat on the back, and then jump right in to the next section.